Now,
Okay. Okay. So what we want to do today, we want to say wholeness to everybody. And we want to try and give us some synergy in the conceptual understanding that Eitai has been continuing to share with us. Um, I want to start by utilizing the scripture again to kind of verify how these revelations continue to reveal themselves as the ancestral energy continue to make contact with us in our conscious development at this particular time. And in doing study, you have to remember the significance of language and what it has been coined to do. And again, I'm in complete harmony with what Eitai is saying in respect to how brilliant our ancestors, you understand, laid this out. When you really begin to understand, you really see the brilliance of it because you can't contribute this to anyone other than those of brilliance.
that's
It can't happen to just anybody. This is brilliant. It really is. The problem is that the emanation into this physical realm brought with it this loss of consciousness, which holds a significant key in terms of us understanding where it is that we are trying to go and what we are trying to manifest in contemporary time. So it was critical that the idea of something that was going to keep us in division had to be created to prolong the cycle of time that we was in transition from descent into ascension.
okay.
So I want to start with the Bible, which again we very much familiar with. I was reading in the 5th chapter of the book of Genesis a simple term that we all in read, but because not understanding the symbol, we overlooked it. And in simple, it reads, it's coming off of the first 2 verses of the 5th chapter, where it reads, this is the book of the generation of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him, male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. Now, Eitai have been telling us about this term creation as opposed to emanation.
Okay.
I've always had a problem with Genesis 1:26 and 27, and it has kept me in trouble because I never could accept the idea of Zachar ve'Nekiva, meaning man and woman, or male and female. It just never made sense. And everybody done given these reasons as to why, but now I understand it, why they had to do that. I'm going to go back to 1 and 27 and show how just the same 2 terms, male and female, says created he them. But the interesting part is in verse 3. Verse 3 says, and Adam lived 130 years and begot sons in his own likeness, after his image, and called thy name Seth. His name Seth. Now, the interesting word is lived. So, I mean, we know about living as we understand it. But when I look the word up, live, and for those that want to do some research, the word for live is 2421. That's the Eitai, could you pull that up for us right quick?
I'm pulling it up right now, Nasik. Bear with me a little bit. I've been doing some deep study into words. So I got to back up a long way. Hold on one second. Here we go.
The interesting thing about this word is the very last definition. The very last definition. And the very last definition brings us to everything that we are talking about at this very hour. And the Strong's Concordance that I'm reading, 2421, it says kaya. Okay, life. Now, but let's just read through every one of them, and I'm going to go right to the last word to give us the key. The last definition in the book, it says to be whole. To be WHOLE. So now, you say, well, what is whole? Everything that we've been talking about in this age of enlightenment that we are talking about, it is connected to wholeness, unity, oneness.
Okay.
And we keep saying anything outside of wholeness, you are not going to live. You're not living. Now, so what's the significance of this? And how all of this tie together is, let's go back to what our ancient forefathers say, our ancient ancestors, and they left us what we would call, I'm going to read it exactly what they said. Our ancient ancestors left us a detailed blueprint of what to do when the earth comes to an end. Now, when you hear the earth come to an end, based upon the traditional knowledge of reason, you think in terms of the physical earth coming to an end.
Correct.
The earth is talking about man is composed in this creation cycle of what you call minerals of the earth. So it's mankind that does not come into wholeness. That's the end of that particular man.
It goes back to second Esdras, what you talked about, that the end of Esau and the beginning happens in Yaqub.
There you
Cain.
Right. So they also left us, I use the word codex, which is a code, and that's what we're talking about, symbols. It's encoded things, and it's sealed within a cycle of time of what we've been talking about the end of Jacob, the end of Esau and the beginning of Jacob. It's a specific time when you understand the code.
That's correct.
Now, we move to see how all of this is connected. And now we're going to go to the emanation as opposed to the creation. If we go to Genesis 1 and 16, you don't have to turn there. We just go and we reflect back. Genesis 1 and 16, it talks about the two great lights that was put in the heavens, one to rule the day and the other to rule the night. And then it says it creates the stars. Okay. And then we go from there to Daniel 12 and 3. And then it talks about how the stars would be for signs and seasons and be for wisdom. Now, when we look at the word star, we find the number for star in the Hebrew Greek is 3554.
Okay.
Each time you need to go there and pull that now, 3554. Okay. This is going to give us another key.
Hold on one second. All right. Very good, Nasik.
Go ahead, read Read it to everybody.
All right. I'll let
Strong's H 3554. Kava. Kava.
Kava. This is the prime root, again, H 3554, a primitive root rather. It means to burn, to scorch, to brand, to be burned, to be scorched. A primitive,
Okay.
a primitive root, this is interesting, properly to prick or penetrate.
That's the word I want to hear you say. Penetrate.
Very good.
Penetrate.
Very good, Nasik.
To pump, to penetrate. Now you have to take that and you have to go all the way back to Genesis 1:26 and 27. You're going to find male and female. Zahar and Nikivah. The word Nikivah means to puncture. It means to perforate. It means to prick. It means to penetrate. So now let's go to a couple of definitions. After we're going to read the 12th chapter of Daniel, so we'll understand what's saying here. Daniel 12:3 says, "And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and forever." So, Eitai, I've been teaching us about how, our prophets, we are the stars that it's talking about.
That's correct.
Because we emanated not from this place here that we're talking about. We emanated from a higher source and a higher elevated consciousness that is imperative for us to accomplish and understand this day in order to get back to our wholeness of self. Now, hold your point there. We're going to go to a particular point about what we would call alien language or our ancestral language. They've told us mathematics is the language of the creation. Mathematics is not the language of the creation.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. Very good.
He says, so the code was not written, this ancient code was not written in human language.
Right.
You see, if we try to use logic, reason, we will never ever understand or come into the understanding that is critical for us to grasp Hayom, today, tomorrow, and Ad Olam Ba'ed. It's alien language is connected to our ancient past and to our emanation. Alien intelligence is nothing more than enlightenment, the opening of the consciousness of ascending to a higher state of being, of wholeness, of oneness. Now, when you talk about alien language, that's all we're talking about. We're talking about alien people. Ain't no alien people like that. We are the alien people, but it's the alien knowledge of everything being related to the creation.
That's correct.
Now,
absolutely correct. Brilliant.
Now we go to the concept of the age that we are coming out of now. We remember the concept called the age of reason or the age of enlightenment. Now, listen to this here. We're going to Jeff Brenner to verify what we are talking about and how to understand the age that we are in and transition out of. I used to always ask myself, I hear people talking about Hebrew thought. So I want to know, well, what is Hebrew thought? And ain't nobody never give it any, conceptual understanding that I was comfortable with. But again, I didn't have a complete knowledge myself. I had to accept it. So here we go. We're going to start with ancient Hebrew thought from the Hebrew lexicon, Jeff Benner, page 11. And what it says, the definition of a word is going to be directly related to the culture in which the word is being used. One word may have different meanings depending on the culture that is using it. And you see here, the culture of this Western world is not one word. You may have one word with 40 different meanings to it.
Okay.
So here we go. It says, in other words, in order to place the correct context to a Hebrew word from the ancient Hebrew language, one must first understand ancient Hebraic thought. Now we still don't know what the thought is, but now we're finna get to the thought. He says, abstract and concrete. Now this ties back into the age of enlightenment of contemporary European, or what you would call the
postmodern thought.
Right, but Kalaj, you always talked about it. What's the term that you use? Kalaj, what is the term that you always use when you talk about this age of enlightenment?
Power intellect.
No. This cycle of time that we're talking about, you always talk about it, this European thought process.
The Renaissance?
Yeah, there you go, Renaissance. Everybody understand, they know about Renaissance. Now here we go. It's the abstract and concrete. Greek thought views the world through the mind, abstract thought. Ancient Hebrew thought views the world through the senses, concrete thought. So now you got the mind, which is abstract. When you got concrete, you got sense organs. So you hear people say, that don't make sense. Well, what they're saying is that it don't resonate or connect to your sense organ. You're trying to now understand something from an abstract idea that doesn't have anything to do with you. Now, how does that relate? Let's go back to the age of reason. Let me pull it up here. Age of reason, what they say. 1 second. There we go. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Age of enlightenment. Age of enlightenment, also known as the age of reason. It says, enlightenment was an intellectual and philosophical movement that dominated the world of ideas in Europe during the 18th century. The Enlightenment included a range of ideas centered on reason as the primary source of authority and legitimacy, and came to advance ideals like liberty, progress, tolerance, fraternity, constitutional government, and separation of church and state. Now, this is what we have been through.
That's right.
And going through this is how we see everything. Through something called the mind, they created the concept of the mind so that you could reason within the ideal world that they had what? Instituted. It had nothing to do with that which we thought we were connected to at one time. They completely disconnected us from what we were talking about, gave us an idea of something that was always, if you can conceive it, you can achieve it. Well, we ain't conceived anything to achieve anything that has changed anything for us. So, closing the point out, enlightenment. 1669. It said the act or means of enlightenment, the state of being enlightened, a philosophical movement of the 18th century by a rejection of traditional social, religion, and political ideas and emphasis on rationalism. Now, it was only a few men that were instrumental in putting this in motion, but it was just like what we're going through now, to cause people to transition out of an organic world and everything being connected into a world of separation, a world of division, a world of ideas that were abstract. It was very, very difficult. That's why they had to use force to what? Cause people to accept this.
That's correct.
And so as we close this out, rationalism, 1827, relies on reason as the basis for establishing of religious truth. A theory that reason is in itself a source of knowledge superior to and independent of sense perception. You see there? That's exactly what I just said. When they went to abstract, they removed your sense perception out of the equation. And then they said, a view that reason and experience, rather than the non-rational, well, what is the non-rational? Are the fundamental criteria in the solution of problems. So now we see that there's no problem that has been resolved based upon this abstract way, because it was never created, you understand, to be brought, to a solution. We have to move outside of rationalism in order to what? Solve the problem. This is where the brilliance of our ancestors. They left us this what? This absolute plan of how to resolve all of these things. And I close out with this here. Wholeness. 14th century. The assemblage of parts or elements belonging to a thing complete in itself, or comprising all of its parts or elements. An assemblage of parts associated are viewed together as one thing, a unitary system. An assemblage or combination of things or parts forming a complex or unitary whole, undivided. So when we talk about this cycle of time that we did, Raphael, we're talking about coming into a cycle where we are unified in all that we are and with all of the creation, wherein man then he moves out of the cycle of the transit into the cycle of the eternal. Okay. So I'll hold right there, and Eitai, you can come on from there.